Whenever David Rosie come to me, only recently with a sad story. Didn't pay attention, I didn't want to hear, because I done dead and gone and I'm finding me own. But when he tell me the doctor gone back in power on the 5th of October, in the grave I started to shiver. But when he tell me Mr. Desmond agreed to all of the doctor plan, so I come tonight to tell Desmond where you wrong. Look, I hear you fight the election as a clean and decent man. Desi, you're wrong. Desi, you're wrong. And the GECOM left the commission to the college coyote plan. Desi, you're wrong. Desi, you're wrong. But as president of the land, you failed to set up a battle plan. That is why you can't. Desi, you can't. Want to be a veteran in politics, you gotta be smart and have plenty tricks. Never put all your confidence in your fellow man, especially when you're fighting an election. I hear they say that the doctor tell you to bring up Zorba, and so from America you bring Mr. Carter. But listen, brother Debbie, you should have never ever agree. You could have come and let me advise you properly. The observers from overseas, you bring to scrutinize Guyanese. They say you're wrong. They say you're wrong. Anywhere they send Mr. Carter, the opposition take over. They say you're wrong. They say you're wrong. But as president of the land, you fail to set up a battle plan. That is why you can't. Yes, you can't. There we go. Years, you know I used to sanction to everyone throughout the CARICOM. If a leader wants to stay in position, he must never think but a free and fair election. We know that the doctor wanted to get in power with everything in favor, confusing the leader election. They went presidency. Instead of voting for PNC, he so confused that he voted for the PPP. I heard the ballot had to be counting at the place of poll in the evening. Desi, you're wrong. Desi, you're wrong. On the night before the election, the list was still in confusion. Desi, you're wrong. Desi, you're wrong. But as president of the land, you failed to set up a battle plan. That is why you can't. Desi, you can't. Alive? American. For all his patience, grit and determination. For 28 long years he waited patiently to rise again and defeat the PNC. He captured presidency, applied the pressure on he, embarrassed the PNC, then demolished presidency. If only now that he know he faith from all them chances he take. Well, it's now that he get to learn from his own mistake. Teddy is president of the land. No use to fret and frown. Jesse, you're wrong. Jesse, you're wrong. The man is a true born politician. That is why he win the election. Jesse, you're wrong. Jesse, you're wrong. But as former president of the land, I tell you the function and carry on. Jesse, you're going back to the mausoleum. Jesse, you're wrong. But as president of the land, you fail to set up a battle plan. That is why you can't, Jesse, you can't. Want to be a veteran in politics, you gotta be smart and have plenty tricks. Never put all your confidence in your fellow man, especially when you're fighting an election. I hear they say that the doctor tell you to bring up Zorba, and so from America you bring Mr. Carter. But listen, brother Desi, you should have never ever agree. You could have come and let me advise you properly. The observers from overseas, you bring to scrutinize Guyanese. Desi, you're wrong. Desi, you're wrong. Anywhere they send Mr. Carter, the opposition take over. Desi, you're wrong. Desi, you're wrong. But as president of the land, you fail to set up a battle plan. That is why you can't, Desi, you can't. There we go. So many years, you know, I used to sanction to everyone throughout the GECOM. If a leader wants to stay in position, he must never think but a free and fair election. We know that the doctor wanted to get in power, did everything in his favor, confusing the leader election. They went presidency instead of voting for PNC. He so confused that he voted for the PPP. I heard the ballot has to be counting at the place of poll in the evening. Jesse, you're wrong. Jesse, you're wrong. On the night before the election, the list was still in confusion. Jesse, you're wrong. Jesse, you're wrong. But as president of the land, you failed to set up a battle plan. That is why you can't, Jesse, you can't. Alive? admire Dr. Chedi Jagan for all his patience, grit and determination. For 28 long years he waited patiently to rise again and defeat the PNC. He captured presidency, applied the pressure on heat, embarrassed the PNC, then demolished presidency. If only now that he know he faith from all them chances he take. Well, it's now that he got to learn from his own mistake. Chedi is president of the land. No use to fret and frown. They say you're wrong. They say you're wrong. The man is a true born politician. That is why he win the election. They say you're wrong. They say you're wrong. But as former president of the land, I say let the function and carry on. They say you're born back to the mausoleum. You're wrong.
Oh, yes. Good evening to you and welcome to Politics 101.
To the side story. Didn't pay attention, I didn't want to hear. Because I don't dead and gone and I'm minding my own affair. But when he tell me the doctor gone back.
The Mighty Rebel. That's certainly one of the classics coming out of our country, Guyana. Desi, you're wrong, capturing a moment in our political history. And it's a classic calypso because there are stories in there. You know, Desi, you're wrong. Capturing what was the sentiment among PNC supporters of that time that Desmond White should not have surrendered. He should not have conceded the election. But the calypso also talks about the tenacity of Chedi Jagan. So, you know, it celebrates the victory, even as it critiques. And then it's a commentary on elections in Guyana and Burnham's take on elections in Guyana. Really what you call a classic calypso. Desi, you're wrong. I'm surprised that the Calypsonians didn't do a similar one after the 2020 election. David, you're wrong. Not me. The other David. David, you're wrong. Similar circumstances. It's one of the things about our calypso is that you know the fear that you see in the wider society finds its way on the stage. So Calypsonians generally sing very safe calypsos, unlike Trinidad and some of the other islands in the Caribbean. The Calypsonians are fearless, and you tend to get much more of a pointed critique of the politics of the day. The Mighty Rebel was singular in that regard. He was a political Calypsonian first and foremost, and he didn't. In the 80s, he was singing against the PNC government, and he would bring second all the time. And this was the first time, 1993, that he actually won the crown So, you know, when he came to critique the PPP in song, he had been doing that. He didn't spare any government. And that's what the art form is about, you know? That is what the art form is about. It's I call it the greatest musical genre in the world because of the stories it tells, the narratives, they're all there. Desi, you're wrong. Desi, you're wrong. And as I said, I'm surprised that the Calypsonians didn't capture the sentiment around the 2020 election. David, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. We are always going to have those issues surrounding our elections because of the nature of our society. The nature of our society. Good evening to all of you, and welcome to Politics 101 on a Thursday evening. We're coming tonight on air with the announcement that the government has appointed Mr. Clifford Hicken, Mr. Clifton Hicken, as the substantial commissioner of police. And I hope Guyanese, especially African Guyanese, are seeing what this government is doing. So earlier in the week, or over the last 2 weeks, the president went and he talked to police, and then he talked to soldiers and said, you're going to give soldiers a 1 month pay, and he buttered them up and they're clapping. I watched that good, you know. Nice president. And the next 2 days, he breaks the law by appointing a commissioner without satisfying the constitutional requirement of agreement by the opposition leader. The opposition leader is not given his agreement. And so this is an act of unconstitutionality by the president, not for the first time. Not for the first time. One day he go and say, "Yeah, you one thing," and you're a black man. You watch some of them. And then 2 days later, he break the law. The only reason I'm pointing to African Guyanese is because if any group should avoid falling for that trap, is them. But the critique is equally important for Indian Guyanese because you all are remaining silent. I'm not talking about those on our side, those Indo-Guyanese who belong to opposition parties. I'm talking about the Indian Guyanese so-called civil society and others who remain quiet while this government repeatedly breaking the law. Mr. Aiken is past the age of retirement. It's past the age of retirement. Under normal circumstances, he should be retired. But you bring him back. Why you bring back a retired police officer to head the police force, and when the opposition leader does not go along with you, you make the appointment nevertheless. And clearly, the government is going to cite necessity. What is so absolutely necessary for you to appoint Mr. Hickens If Mr. Hicken were not appointed, what will happen? Would Guyana, would Venezuela invade tomorrow? Would law and order go through the window tomorrow? What is so absolutely necessary? Well, there's more in the mortar than the pestle. Clearly, appointing Hickens is an act of convenience. Hickens is going to get all the so-called benefits. He's going to get next to his name, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Hickens, for doing our bidding. Thank you, Mr. Hickens, for doing our bidding. But it's more than Hickens. Look at the deputy commissioners who have been appointed. And it's from that pool that the next commissioner is going to come from. It is from that pool the next commissioner is going to come from. So the Hicken thing is a dance. The PPP is prepared to break the law in order to get to say thanks to their man and to open up the opportunity for another of their man. That is what we're seeing here. And it is that disrespect for all of us that has become so normative. The man show up, butter up them soldier. I saw them skin their teeth and a clap. Some of them knock table. It's one thing to be polite. If your commander-in-chief is there and he's making an announcement, you'll be polite. I am not saying the soldier should not be polite to the president. He's their commander-in-chief. But when the man announced the couple penny, if you watch them, and then 2 days later, he clap it on their ass. And this is what this government is reducing our countrymen and women to. A serious case of serfdom. And they're doing it. They're not hiding. And then Jacques is going to get up there and talk about democracy. Talk about democracy. You know, he like talk about democracy. What democracy? What democracy? When David Granger appointed the chairman of the Elections Commission, after rejecting the lists that were given to him by Jack Dio, he appointed his own chairman unilaterally. And the court found that that was a violation of the Constitution, that he had to choose a chairman from the lists sent to him by the opposition leader. And the court found that he acted unconstitutionally. I see the PPP has gone to court. That's the PNC. They have either gone to court or they say they're going to court. Because just as the court found that Mr. Granger's unilateral action violated the Constitution, the court, by its own logic, has to find President Ali's action, unilateral action, a violation of the Constitution. The law is clear. You have to have the agreement. of the opposition leader. You did not get that agreement, and you went, well, the doctrine of necessity. What is so necessary for you to have a man who passed the age of retirement? What does he can bring that you have to go outside of the Constitution to appoint him? You see, this doctrine of necessity thing, it's all over. In America, they call it recess appointment. The president can wait until Congress goes out of session and make all kinds of appointments, so the people wouldn't have to go before Congress for Congress to give its stamp on their thing. This except chap that Congress may vote against, Trump can wait until Congress go out of session and appoint except. The except would be acting. And in the case of the Department of the Military, you don't want an acting secretary of the military, so they may not go down that line. But lots of other appointments the president can make when Congress is out of recess. It's called recess appointment. But when Congress comes back, that person remains acting. What is the necessity? As I pointed out, my view is to say thanks to Hicken for good service to them and to pave the way for one of their men to be appointed the substantive commissioner of police. It's a maneuver, but they've broken the law. They've broken the law. They've violated the Constitution. You have to have the agreement of the opposition leader. And this is what we have in Guyana, the normalization of breaking the law. Breaking the law. Good evening to you all, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to Politics 101. And it's a Thursday evening, and our country continues to walk down that road. The road to dictatorship. And there is no letting up. There is no letting up. No letting up on the part of the PPP. They don't care. They don't care what the rest of us think. And they're making no bones about it. They're making no bones about it. That is why our country is in the mess that it is, and we have got to end the mess. I have a couple of people to thank. I have to thank Keith and C-Thread for making their contributions to Politics 101. Thank you all. I already thank Ms. Booker for our contribution to Politics 101. Thank you all very much. What we are risking in Guyana is the law meaning nothing. because this is a government that seeks every opportunity not to uphold the law, but to violate the law. Where is the issue of the Natural Resource Fund, and drawing out the money without saying how the money is spent, where the money going. And they're always making an argument. The president did another early morning story, cussing out those who are saying, man, be transparent. But this government is fighting against transparency. You're not getting nothing for hide. Just say what you're using the money for. Why you are resisting saying what you're using the money for? It's not you money. It's people money. And even if, as the executive branch, you have the right to spend the money, if the people are saying, we want to know where you spend it on, even if the law does not explicitly say you have to do it, implicitly the Constitution and the laws require you to do it. It may not explicitly, there may not be an explicit clause that says you have to say, itemize where you're spending the money on. But Constitution is not just about what is explicit in the Constitution. It's also what is implicit in the Constitution, what we call implied laws. Implied. We have implied laws and inherent laws. And the Constitution requires transparency. It requires transparency. That is why it set up other branches of government, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, that these branches function as checks and balances on the executive. The executive doesn't have any special right not to be transparent. But the PPP continues to fight against all efforts at transparency. Why? Why? It is because they have a lot to cover up. They have a lot to cover up. It's the same reason they're fighting against biometrics. They're fighting against a clean voters list. If you have nothing to hide and you can win an election, they want biometrics, give them biometrics. Let the PPP show me how biometrics is going to help to cheat them. They haven't made that argument, that if we use biometrics, that it will be a device to rob them. They haven't made that. All they're saying, the use of biometrics is a device to help the opposition. But of course, the opposition has to make sure it sets itself right, but it has to do so within the ambit of the Constitution. The PPP is yet to make an argument that having a clean voters list will rob them. They're yet to make an argument that if you have a real impartial chairman of GECOM, it will rob them. The use of biometrics will not legally rob the PPP. The use of a clean voters list will not legally rob the PPP. But the PPP knows that without biometrics and without a clean voters list, their chance of robbing the opposition increases. So what they're doing is that they're protecting fraud before the fraud happens. They are protecting the machinery that will facilitate the fraud, which will help them. Jack, you say a thing, I remember that every day. He said biometrics is a clean voters list. A new voters list through the back door. I say, Mr. Jack Dio, whether you have a new voters list through the back door, the front door, or the side door, why are you afraid of it? Of course. What biometric does is that it decreases the opportunity to steal the election through the bloated list. Because what biometric does is that it guards against voter impersonation. Because we all know that that bloated list helps with voter impersonation. That extra people can vote and you wouldn't pick it up easily because those people are on the voters list. So once somebody get hold of their ID card and their papers and vote for them, it is not going to be reflected. That is why the SOP's argument is an argument that is meant to help the PPP. The SOPs will show how many votes you put in the box. What we learned from the recount is that the votes in the box, not all of them were valid votes. Plenty of them were thieving votes. The SOPs will show how many votes go into the box. So if you have a polling station with 800 voters, bloated, because that 800 include people from overseas and so on and so forth. So 800 people supposed to vote. At the end, 400 turn out and vote. But by the time you done pack and do your vote impersonation, it will show 600 people vote. You can't catch them so easily because you already have a list of 800, it bloated already. And so what they do is thief out a 200 from the extra that is on the list. And the SOPs will reflect what you put in the box. That is why the PPP calling for SOPs. All the SOPs will show is what you put in the box. And in the case of the 47 boxes from the East Coast, the statutory documents would have showed less votes than what's in the box. So they throw away the statutory documents. These people are really, I hear people say that the PPP understands election and election camp. The PNC understand it too. It's not just the PPP. Both parties understand. But when they talk about the PNC, they say the PNC understand how to rig and the PPP understand how to win election. But the PPP shows how they've been winning election all the time. Even the PNC time, the rigging used to happen on election day where people vote 10 times and 15 times. The PPP more sinister. Then wait on an election day for people vote 15 and 20 times. The thief about 4 or 5 seats before the election start. And that is why the PPP is fighting against any legal change. And critical to that is the chairman of the commission. If the chairman of the commission said no, then it's no. But the chairman of the commission is not saying no. So if we were to go by the formula we have, the difference between a free and fair election and a fraudulent election is the chairman of the commission. And the chairman of the commission has to understand that. When she's claiming that when people say things about her and her stewardship of GECOM, they're putting her in danger, well, she's putting herself in danger. She holds the key. And when you hold the key, you hold responsibility. You already presided over an election in 2020 that both sides claim what was rigged against them. Well, one side said there was an attempt to rig. And your vote was critical in declaring one side the winner in a contested election. As we talk about electoral reform, it is the chair that we have to talk about. We put on the table, find some way of taking away the casting vote from the chair and using the Suraj-Bali formula. Whether that can be legally done, the lawyers will have to say. But we may probably have to move towards a chairmanship of GECOM rather than a chair. Probably have a 3-person chair where each person has a veto over the other. If we had a 2-person chair or a 3-person chair and she could not have made that decision, she couldn't bring consensus with the partisan commissioner. She would have had to find consensus with or other 2 commissioners on what you call the chairmanship. So you have a 3-person chair and you have what is called a rotating. So if the term is 6 years, the first 2 years, one commissioner is the chair. The second year, another one. The second 2 year, the third 2 year. But none of them could make a decision without having the other 2. So you have a chance to find consensus at 2 levels, among the partisan commissioners, and then among the non-partisan chairs. So you remove that absolute vote from the one chairperson. If you have 3 chairpersons, each serving part of the term, each having a veto over the other 2. That is something I have been thinking about for the last couple of days as another thing to think about in solving this problem. The chair, Madam Chairperson is clear. She's going down. She's going down with the PPP. She's very clear. She's not trying to redeem herself. She's not trying to redeem herself. She has decided to go down. From what we've been hearing, Vincent Alexander should have dropped in here this evening, but he got called to an emergency meeting at the last moment. He will see if he can join us before we leave. But Vincent should have been here to give us the latest on biometrics and the voters list. Some of you messaged me about my remarks the last time, 2 days ago, I think, about Sharon Das, in which I argued that Sharon Das's act was unconstitutional. Because while the Constitution allows for a vote of no confidence, what the Constitution is silent on is that a parliamentarian who is selected by a party, not elected. Sharon Das was not elected, it wasn't a first past the post election where you're elected directly by the people, and so you have a mandate by the people. And when you go in the parliament, you're representing those people from that constituency. That is not the case in Guyana. In Guyana, the party wins, not individual. And the party select the individual. So if the individual is unhappy, he goes to his party and says, I'm unhappy, I want out of here, and the party replaces him. Under the spirit of the Constitution, Sharon Das did not have the right. And he said, I heard him on a program saying that he should have gone to Harold Lutchman, Dr. Lutchman. He was not elected directly. And so his vote was not his vote. His vote is his party's vote. That is the thing about proportional representation. With first past the post, you are elected directly by the voters. With proportional representation, you are elected indirectly because your party is elected and your party then chooses you. So the use of your vote cannot be based on conscience. You cannot cast a conscience vote when it comes to a no confidence motion. Yet Sharon Das did it. I think our lawyers should have gone to court. I mean, they did go to court, and the court found that he was not a Guyanese citizen, and so therefore could not have cast the vote. The vote was unconstitutional, but that argument didn't go very far. But he was not directly elected. He was selected. And he was not even selected by the representative of the list. He was selected by his party, the AFC. The AFC didn't contest the election on its own. So Sharon Das had to be selected by his party, and then the coalition had to accept him for him to be in parliament. Our courts, I think, have been very, very conservative in the reading of the law. Very conservative. When Justice Kissoon made a ruling in the teacher's case, he was thinking outside of the box. They're what they call strict constructivism. People who interpret the Constitution by its word and not by meanings. Thurgood Marshall always said a constitution should be a living document. And a constitution should expand rights, not contract rights. And in a more dynamic environment, the court would have already settled this thing about the voters list. Because the court is saying you can't take people off. The court could say that you could take people off. And the court got reasons it can give. That while the letter of the law may not permit you to take people off the list, certainly the spirit of the law that said you must do everything for a free and fair elections, then it is that spirit that should guide the court to say you can't go into an election with a thief-in list. But our courts prepared to play with a bat and pat close together, and they prepared to go with the letter of the law and not with both the letter and the spirit of the law. We have a legal architecture that is not consistent with the nature of the society. And these are all things that we've got to take care of. Because the PPP is exploiting. They're exploiting the timidity of the court. They're exploiting loopholes in the law. And they're bullying. They're taking advantage of the fact that the opposition has opted not to put their supporters on the road. They're taking advantage of all of that. Because their objective is not good governance. Their objective is to remain in power at all costs. They were telling me up to yesterday morning, I think I was on Kedaki's program, yes, and they were suggesting to me that the government, yesterday was going to be the second reading and the people ram through the law. I knew they were going to do that. This is not a government that will say, look, we have the power. We have the power to ram this law through. We have the power to ram the law through. But we're not going to do it. In the interest of transparency and good governance, we are not going to do it. No, that's not how the PPP operate. We have the power to ram it through, and we will ram it through. I listened to some of the arguments made by the opposition parliamentarians. They tried their best. But clearly this is an issue that they have not had the time to think through. They may not have had the time to sit down with some of the activists who have been thinking about this issue. They tried their best. I don't blame the parliamentarians. Brother Ganesh and I think Sister Manza, Sister Nima, I think they spoke. I think Ramjatan spoke to, and Vincent Henry. Vincent Henry was able to defend the Amerindian right to land and to show how this bill will affect them negatively. Because as Amerindians, they're very steeped in their land rights. Our leaders tend to shy away from anything racial. So when you, there yesterday, you had to deal with race and land. And that is always going to be problematic for opposition, PNC parliamentarians, because they're not socialized to deal with race. So when you come there yesterday where you had to deal with race, they could not make the strong argument. And that is why in a place like Guyana, you always want to make sure that in your parliamentary delegation, you have one or two people who can deal with issues of race, because you can't avoid race and ethnicity in a society like Guyana. So that law is passed. You can appeal, but we no longer appeal stake. We no longer appeal stake, and the court is always very slow to overturn actions of the executive branch. They tend to take a very conservative approach. So we are at a serious crossroads, not only in terms of who's governing, but in terms of the laws and how the government is now normalizing the breaking of the law. And the thing about that kind of thing is that once it starts, you have a hell of a time to control it, because a new government will come in and we'll see how they can govern with the crooked approaches. You remember how they used to cuss our Burnham constitution, and then when the PPP come in, they never change it. Because they said the problem wasn't the constitution, the problem was Burnham. And that is the challenge when you start to mess with the law, when you start to violate the constitution. It becomes normative. And you can't settle that at an election. You see what happened to the Democrats? They allowed Trump to mess with the law. They allow him to attempt to prevent the swearing in, and the courts cover him. And then you go to voters and tell them, vote for democracy. Voters don't vote for democracy. Voters don't vote for democracy. Voters, insofar as they take into consideration issues, they vote based on race, they vote based on economic issues, social issues. Don't vote on democracy. You can't allow a man to subvert democracy. Allow him to pack the courts to help him to subvert democracy. You sit down there and allow him to do it, and then you go to the voter and tell the voters, bail me out, vote for democracy. So it's nonsense. The Democrats learn that lesson. I hope we don't make that mistake in Guyana. When we point out how the government is violating the law, we're pointing it out as a form of education. And that's why I go straight and say, look, don't bother my head too much. Vote these people out. Vote them out. The PPP is showing absolutely no interest, none whatsoever. None whatsoever. None whatsoever. None that they're interested in upholding good governance. Forget it. It is not that they give half and take half. They give nothing and they take all. And when a government reaches to that point, they close the door on democratic change and democratic governance. And you have to get them out. You have to get them out. And sometimes we have to go beyond the normal, because they're normalizing a certain approach to politics. And you have to denormalize that. We are moving forward. We are moving forward. Vincent has not been able to make it. I'll see if he can make it tomorrow because we need that update. As we move down into the Christmas period, let us celebrate the holidays because it's traditional. But let us know that we cannot afford to sleep because the PPP is not sleeping. They are not sleeping. And we cannot afford to sleep. Sister called me last night and she was making the point that we should start from now training our election workers. And she gave me a whole lesson on how it's done in the USA. And I learned something about and processes and systems. And that we can't wait till election call. We got to start training people now. We got to harden people. Usually people who come, I don't know on the PPP side how they do it. But on our side, half of the people, 3/4 of the people who apply, who go to the party and say, we'll work for you on election day, is to get a small piece. Some of them are committed. The small piece is gravy. But there's some who just work as polling agents because they get the money. So we have to train them. The last time, some of them were actually planted. The PPP send some people, they go into the black villages and they give some of the little black boys and girls money and tell them to go and volunteer with APNU. And they come and volunteer and we take them, not knowing it's the PPP send them. We were able to find, in Buxton, we were able to find out, I think some other communities pick it up. In Buxton, we were able to find out. We had the instance where one grandmother knew that her granddaughter was into that nonsense. And she sent to call me, as they would say in the village. And she told me what her granddaughter was up to. So we were able to strike off her name from our list of polling agents. But this is happening all within a week before election. The PPP not sleeping, yeah? So if that grandmother had not called me, we were able to strike off the girl off the list. Because she take the PPP money to come as a plant in our list, you know. The way those people are prostituting black people, it's amazing. And it's amazing that some of our people are gullible, so gullible. I mean, not even a fight, you know? Not even a fight back. Just allow themselves. So we have work to do at that level, in cleaning up a lot of these people. Again, as I always say, I don't tell anybody which party to belong to. If you're an African and you want to go and join the PPP because you feel the PPP is a better party, fine, go do it. That's your business. That's your right. But when you are allowing yourself to be bought, to be given money, a little freak, to go and do that, I have a problem with that. So we have serious work to do. Very serious work to do. And as I said, that sister called me last night and she said, we have to start doing it now so we can separate the sheep from the goat early. And I agreed with her. Because there are things about being a polling agent that you have to do. And you have to know. I always had a sense, but I didn't know. And she walked me through because, you know, she work as a polling agent in American elections. So she has a sense of how the thing. And if we are able to train our polling agents, see, somebody like that we should get them down to Guyana to help to train our polling agents. And that work has to be done now. So, sisters and brothers, once again, another day, another violation of the law. They passed the law last night, and today the man made an unconstitutional appointment. The decision is in our hands as a people, or half of the nation, because we have to be realistic. Half of the nation have decided that for ethnic reasons, they're going to stay PPP, regardless of what the PPP is doing, regardless of whether they believe. And I do believe that some of them believe that what the PPP is doing is wrong. But for ethnic reasons, they hold their nose and they stay with it. It puts the burden on the next half of the society to put an end to this, to put an end to it. I'd like to thank all of you who have contributed. I may have missed one or two names. I know C-Thread, Keith made their contribution, somebody else. Thank you all very much. Every little contribution counts. We'll be back tomorrow night. I know Dr. Vincent Adams is going to be here, and I will try hard to get Vincent Alexander to come on so that we can talk about what's happening there at GECOM. So until tomorrow night, same time, same place, for another edition of Politics 101.